Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We do apologize for the delay in commentary, but we are live at Road Atlanta for round 3 of the Porsche Cup North America. My name is Chad Dillon. Alongside me is Cale Vaden-Roper. He is momentarily indisposed and will be tuning in shortly. However, we are 5 minutes into the qualifying session here at Road Atlanta, a 4-kilometer long circuit, 12 turns, where the drivers will be vying for more points in this 4-round series. This is in fact round 3, and the two drivers at the top of the timing sheets not on it today. Well, Kurt Moss not present, and Raven Plummer a little bit off the pace here this afternoon. Apologies for the momentary interruption there, ladies and gentlemen. However, we are midway through this practice session with Jaden Harrison currently sitting top of the timing sheets. Quali session, as Cale is correcting me, and Cale has yet to do his introduction. So good evening, Cale.
Good evening, Chad, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this evening for the third installment, as Chad so wonderfully introduced. Our third tour, or our third stop on our tour of the North Americas. We're here at Road Atlanta, the 4-kilometer track that is shaped like a chicken leg. We've been here before in CTCC, and this track absolutely delivered in terms of racing action, and we're expecting it here tonight as we're on board Mission Wallace. 8 minutes left in qualifying, and things are looking pretty close at the top.
Well, not as close as we would like to see. Jaden Harrison currently sitting a good 8 tenths away from his nearest competitor, and the rest of the field a further second back from Alex Jarrett, who currently sits in second. I do think, given the conditions for the race here this evening, Cale, that these drivers may struggle a little bit with track conditions. It is varying conditions, not in terms of weather. You will not get rain. However, it is an evening to night race, so there will certainly be some transitioning in terms of temperatures and how your tires are affected, how tire warm-up is done, etc, etc. So certainly the drivers have a little bit more to contend with than they normally would. At current, we're seeing drivers darting back to the pits, maybe some last minute changes to their setups whilst trying to dial it in for the race to come. But I think if they're still making changes at this point, it's a little bit too late, dare I say.
Well, I don't know about that in a child. Speaking of contending with conditions, drivers have that in addition to contending with these cars. We've been watching them throughout the pre-practice session, and up and down the field we're seeing drivers struggle. We're not sure if it's tire temps. You were saying, that it's difficult to keep these tires in the correct tire temperature window. So I think some of the drivers will be looking forward to the dropping temperatures. That might help these tires go a little bit longer. But we know the Porsche is not an easy car to drive. We know that from previous.
From the rounds past, indeed, we have seen some drivers struggle with this car. I myself took it for a spin last night, and let me tell you, these drivers are doing magic right now. It's not the easiest car to drive, and again, keeping those tires in the optimum window is proving quite difficult, particularly around this track in the varied conditions. Track temps at about 36 degrees, air temps at about 25 degrees, and that is Celsius, ladies and gentlemen. But certainly it is not going to be an easy, smooth sailing for these drivers here. It's a 50-minute race, so there is lots of time for them to make adjustments. Well, there I say they have to endure quite a bit throughout the duration of this race in order to get the maximum out of it. So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, but certainly with this war of attrition, you have to be on your game at all times.
That is definitely correct, Chad. And coming off the back of a very exciting round 2 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we saw drivers starting on the podium, dropping down to find the last positions, and then fighting their way back up the order. I'm expecting no less here around Road Atlanta. We see the likes of Jaden Harrison currently on pole position, provisional pole position, or previous pole sitter Raven Plummer dead last, Chad. So it's like the field here has been turned topsy-turvy.
Yeah, no, she certainly not had the practice of some of these drivers this week. She's been missing for a little while, and so she hasn't gotten the number of laps in. When we look at the up and down the order, we see drivers doing north of 200 laps during the practice servos this week. So certainly those drivers have an advantage in terms of knowing how the car behaves in the various conditions, and maybe that has played an advantage, because for to see Raven Plummer 2 seconds off the pace, our championship leader at the moment, that's not what you expected to see coming into today. And certainly she has her work cut out for her if she wants to make any inroads into the challengers ahead.
But Chad, it's going to be very fun if things stay how they are right now. 4 minutes left to go in this qualifying session. That's just about 4 laps if you time it right. If things stay as they are right now, Chad, we have a very exciting race ahead of us to see Raven try and the likes of Vince Da Silva try to cut up the field and make their way through. It's just, about 5/10 separating P4 to P6. And we're going to have the top 3 battling. So we have maybe 3 separate battles here to watch up and down the order. So definitely looking forward to that, as you see Roger Keller struggling to put the power down.
Absolutely.
That Porsche GT3 car there coming around, turn 6, I believe. Those rotors on fire.
Absolutely. And again, folks, the race will transition tonight as we progress into the session. So certainly these drivers will have another set of conditions to contend with as we get later into this race. But that is only an added benefit to Raven, because currently the only driver who could unseat her top spot that is present today is Vince Da Silva down in 7th position. So she will likely still be coming out of this race in the lead of this championship. Kurt Moss not present today, who's currently tied with her on points. So it's still looking good for her despite the fact that she is off the pace. So we will certainly see how that ramps up throughout the duration of this event. But overall, Jaden Harrison sitting at the top of the timing sheets at the moment. That is 2/10 off the quickest time we've seen done all week. So not that far from maximum output, dare I say, is Jaden Harrison. And the rest of the field certainly has some work to do to match that pace.
And we see, 5 drivers still out on track. Jaden Harrison seems to be comfortable with the time he has set, sitting in the pits with about 1 minute 50 seconds left to go. If he wanted to get another lap in, he would need to be exiting the pits right now, and he seems to be staying put. So now just only 4 drivers out on track. I think this may be the order we'll be working with here, unless Roger Keller or Nathan Bryan can pull something out of the bag. We saw Nathan Bryan in practice earlier, quickest in the first sector, very fast in the second sector, but unable to get it, sewn up in the final sector. So we see that they're drivers with different strengths and weaknesses at different parts of the track. So we're going to see how that pans out for the rest of the race.
Absolutely. And Alex Jarrett, the only driver who could unseat Jaden Harrison, not the only driver, but the driver with the most chance at the moment to unseat Jaden Harrison for pole, 7/10 off Jaden Harrison's best time, is currently starting what should be his final flying lap. And as he is about to round out Sector 1, he has rounded out Sector 1, but has not improved very greatly through Sector 1, as he is currently going through turn 7. And as he makes the long run down the back straight, We will see if there is anything that he can do to upset the apple cart, so to speak, as he is about to complete sector 2. We will see if there's anything there. Jaden Harrison has gone back out. Will he make it in time to get a lap in by the time we get back to the checkered flag? Not quite sure.
Speaking of making it in time, Kurt Moss has shown his face. He's now in the server. Not sure if he's just spectating or if we're going to see the wily old fox make an appearance in this third round of the JSRA Porsche Cup Series.
Yeah, Kurt Moss was scheduled to have an event with his family here this evening and has found himself in the server at the very last minute and will be probably starting at the back of the field. All of the drivers seem to have backed out of their laps. Mitchen Wallace was on a flyer, but is 6 tenths down through 2 sectors and not improving, so certainly he has not done enough. Alex Jarrett did improve slightly, but not enough to trouble Jaden Harrison at the top of the timing sheets. As Mitchen Wallace gets to the line, we will see if there's any improvement there. Not enough to get him anywhere closer to the top 2, and so this will be our starting order, ladies and gentlemen, and Kurt Moss making a last minute appearance. Jaden Harrison, whilst he should have been doing his final flying lap, was in the chat. But that is typical Jaden, very relaxed about his driving, not too worried about the competition clearly at the moment.
So Raven may have been looking to relax as well, but now with Kurt Moss starting right behind her on the starting grid, which we're going to see the start of this race in about 2 minutes. We're going to have just a bit of a countdown and then the race is going to get going. She will definitely have to focus on her rear view mirrors now. Not sure if Kurt got, I'm pretty sure Kurt got some practice, even though he would be missing this race or so. And he is no stranger to Road Atlanta.
Well, I'll tell you right now, based on the practice times this week, Kurt Moss right up there with Jaden Harrison in terms of the 121. So certainly he does have the pace to make his way through the field, and Raven Plummer might find herself sitting in P2 in this championship by the end of this race. I do see Mr. Penley in the chat saying the graphics are looking quite spectacular here this evening, and certainly we are trying out some new features with the stream, so we do appreciate the feedback all the time, so please let us know what your thoughts are on this new method of streaming. But yeah, certainly the graphics are looking a little bit more realistic, dare I say, in terms of the camera focus and how the views are being displayed. So it has been steady improvements throughout our first year, and as we are at the end of year number 1, it's good to see that there are still ways that we are finding to improve our product to put it out to the general public, and we do always, as always, appreciate the viewership that you have provided us in this our inaugural year. But
we'd be doing if we weren't doing it with our viewers, followers, and our supporters. So I mean, thank you to everyone who has been following along, and always in chat, the likes of Nick Medley, always in the chat, always supporting. So big thank you to everyone.
Absolutely. So we're about to line up on the grid to get going racing in a moment's time. We are just waiting on the drivers to head out onto the grid for our 50-minute race to get going. Once again, 50-minute race. There will be a mandatory pit stop. Pit window opens at minute 20 and will run until the last 10 minutes of the race. So the drivers will have roughly 20 minutes to do their pit stop, so that limits the strategy, dare I say, to that 20-minute window as to how you can utilize that pit window to gain an advantage in your race. And certainly some of these drivers, by the time we get to that pit window, will be begging to change those tires, because based on the experience, the limited experience I've had out on track, it certainly will be necessary to get a tire change done by the time you get to the midway point, because these tires do seem to overheat in these conditions. I am not sure if that is because of the drop in temperature. You slide around a little bit more and therefore the tires suffer a little bit more because of it. That is one theory. However, certainly these drivers have their work cut out for them this evening in this 50-minute race, and it has already gone dark.
It's starting much darker than I had anticipated, Chad. So, the drivers may not have to contend with such atrocious tire temperatures right off the bat, but with the expected lap 1 and maybe even lap 2 melee up into the first corners, the first series of corners, we may see those tire temps shoot up, skyrocket past normal or nominal temperatures. I just see everyone with their headlights on and ready to go.
Absolutely. So we await the lights to come on for the drivers to get going, and we will watch as these drivers line up to take the start of this round 3 of the North American Tour in the Porsche Cup. And so we are lined up, and we will be getting going in a moment's time as we await the lights. We have 9 drivers lined up on the grid. The 2 championship leaders way down at the back of the order, and certainly will have some work to do to get back into contention for this race. But we're about to get the lights coming on, and once they go out, we will be going here in Road Atlanta. The 6 lights, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and as soon as they go out now, we are off, ladies and gentlemen. Jaden Harrison getting a clean getaway there at the front of the field. Alex Jarrett comes through in second position. Mitch and Wallace. Oh, there is some contact there, and carnage has started immediately, ladies and gentlemen. And there may be the need for a safety car coming out of that incident. We await the steward's feedback on that. However, there was lots of contact there, and Kurt Moss, out of nowhere, finds himself in P2 immediately.
No, Chad, look, we can see Jaden seems to be racing by himself. It looks like Lewis Hamilton Hungary 2021 starting by himself, went around the first corner, and there's no one behind him for 6 seconds.
Absolutely. Kurt Moss comes out of the wreckage in second position, automatically up the order, as is Vince Da Silva and Raven Plummer. So our 2 championship leaders find themselves further up the order than they started with that turn 1 chaos that took place.
It was Alex Jarrett, our pole sitter, in 9th position, 6 seconds adrift of the furthest person, the next closest person, who was Kimani Eastman. It seems as though Raven Plummer has had a bit of an incident on her own, but Jaden Harrison, 11 seconds lead before the end of the first lap. There's someone going a bit wayward. I think that was Roger Keller.
Absolutely. Roger Keller not hearing the call for the safety car and was going a little bit quicker than he should have been in that moment. There was a call for the safety car, and the drivers should be bunching up at the moment. And we are watching as they have cut their speeds down to try and get the field bunch back up after that incident. And Jaden Harrison has slowed down, and Kurt Moss is now catching up, and I assume we will get going again at the end of this lap. So we are trying to get the field bunched up here, ladies and gentlemen, but not sure what's happening with Roger Kello. They're going a lot slower than the leaders. Roger Kello playing as his own safety car at the moment. Needs to get a move on to catch up with the rest of the field.
Chad, expected or unexpected? In my opinion, this was definitely expected. Starting in these very difficult, I say challenging, not difficult, challenging cars to drive side by side in a very fast turn one right-hander. I think this was not the best outcome, but it could have been much worse.
Absolutely, and certainly here we are. You do expect carnage in turn one at some of these tracks, particularly when all of the cars are bunched up together, and that turn one is a very tricky corner, and if you get it very wrong, you can have it happen. So the field is now bunched again, and we can go racing at the end of this lap. And Kurt Moss is out. Kurt Moss was not available for the duration of this race and has exited the race. So Raven Plummer may be able to breathe a sigh of relief even following the incident that she may have had that dropped her back down the order, having ended up in 4th position off the line. But Vince Da Silva now finds himself in a very good position here, sitting in 2nd place as we are rounding the final few corners, and there seems to be a little bit of mishap there with a few of the drivers, Nathan Bryan and Mitch and Wallace, making a little bit of contact.
But the drivers are underway for this race to resume. 45 minutes on the clock. 5 minutes elapsed already. So many, 2 of those under the safety car, but drivers seem to be getting away well this time around, going through turn 1. A bit shaky there from Michelle Wallace, but still keeping it pointed in the right direction, coming up around turn 2, cresting the hill. You can see these cars managing to keep it clean. Coming now down through the S's. Roger Kello has put a gap between himself and Michelle Wallace of about half a second. Michelle not being shaken off at all. But up at the front, Jaden Harrison extends his lead by over a second in the first 5 corners from Vince Da Silva.
Absolutely, and Vince Da Silva a further second clear of Roger Kello behind, and a gap is already forming between the front 2. Well, actually, Jaden Harrison just clearing off into the distance ahead of the rest of the field. And as we are still on board with Roger Kello here, he might find himself in a battle with both Nathan Bryan and Mitch and Wallace for that final podium paying position. And all the while, Raven Plummer seems to still be struggling. She had an incident there that dropped her back behind Alex Jarrett, and still has some work to do here with 44 minutes to go in this race now. And as we are rounding to start I believe this is lap 4, we are seeing Jaden Harrison with the fastest lap of the race so far, but that will get a lot quicker. His last lap of 1:24.1. Certainly those laps will be getting much quicker as we progress through this race. At this stage of the game, it is still warming up your tires, still trying to get the tires operating correctly, and we are in the night time, so certainly the drivers have to be a little bit more careful about how they pick their braking points and so on. But certainly we will be getting lots of racing action. We appreciate the feedback in the chat. It does look like we are watching real racing at the moment. You can see the glowing disc pads there in the Porsche, and it's looking good so far. Mitch and Wallace right there with Roger Kello, and will be the driver attacking him soonest.
Mitch and Wallace may have to turn his focus to his rearview mirrors. In 5th position, Nathan Bryan, 5/10, that's just half a second of Michelle Wallace, who is trying to get past Roger Kello. There's Raven Plummer making the move up into 7th position, snatching that like candy from a baby from Kimani Eastman on the back stretch. Raven Plummer has 1 down, and dare I say 6 more to go.
She seems to be struggling at the moment because she's 15 seconds behind the rest of the field, so I'm not sure if Kimani made a mistake there to give her back that 7th position, but Raven Plummer not on it today at all, and certainly is struggling at the moment. She is a further 15 seconds behind Alex Jarrett up the road, who is already falling away from the rest of the field. So not sure how easy this will be to get going here this evening for Raven Plummer, but we will keep an eye on the battle between Mitch and Wallace and Nathan Bryan. Currently, the two giving chase through Sector 2 as they have just gone through Turn 5, and Nathan Bryan maybe with something to prove here this evening. I think this is his second round of competition, having missed round 1. Is trying to get himself back into contention in this championship, and Mitch and Wallace his first target there,
and he's keeping that target well in sight. I don't think the gap has extended beyond 7th, 10th. Nathan Bryan definitely on it here tonight around Road Atlanta. They're heading into the braking zone of turn 8. Not able to make anything there stick, but he's getting ever closer. The gap now 4/10 and getting closer. He might have an excellent run here on Michelle Wallace going through the final sequence of corners now firmly in the slipstream. He may try a dummy move to the outside to get Michelle to go defensive, but we know Michelle is a very wise racer. His racecraft and skill is unbelievable. He's actually a coach for many of the drivers here at JSRA, so he'll not be perturbed by the headlights of Nathan Bryan in his rearview mirrors, but Nathan's still very much a threat to Michelle Wallace.
Ooh, and that is Nathan going off. He has lost it there heading into the S's, and that is rather unfortunate to see, as certainly that would have been a good battle to watch. Nathan Bryan on the hunt for Mitch and Wallace, but Nathan now has some work to do to get back into contention here. Mitch and Wallace may be breathing a sigh of relief there. Now he can focus his attention back on Roger Keller ahead of him, and he is giving chase. The gap now under a second, and I was just about to give Nathan his props in saying that he is doing well to keep with Mitchen through those corners, because certainly it's not that easy to follow, one, at night, and two, in cars that require some amount of downforce. You start getting the aero wash, and maybe that was what played a factor there in the chase that was happening between Nathan Bryan and Mitch and Wallace. You get a little bit of aero wash coming out of those corners, and that causes some amount of issue. And I am seeing some feedback in the chat that Raven Plummer is this week racing on controller, as she is having some issues with her wheels, so maybe that explains a little bit of the pace disadvantage here that she is having this evening. Not to say that it is easier on a wheel than it is on a controller, but certainly once you get used to your inputs and outputs on one medium of play, it's a little bit harder to transition to another overnight, if you get what I mean.
Coming from a driver who started on controller, did quite well for myself, and then moved to wheel, and then came back to controller recently. It is no small feat, so the fact that Raven was able to even get that overtake done and is keeping a consistent uptime, I guess you can say that this is a one-off. I'm sure this is going to be a one-off in terms of performance. Hopefully she gets that wheel issue sorted out. It's not easy at all, but I don't think we're going to be seeing, unless Commander Eastman can bring the battle to her, I'm not sure if we're going to be seeing much from Raven tonight. However, Nathan Bryan was 7 seconds behind Alex Jarrett. He has cut that down to 5.9 seconds between himself and 5th place now. Michelle Wallace was closer to Roger Keller, but he seems to have made a few too many errors. He's now 1.5 seconds behind. Jaden Harrison sitting cool, calm and collected up in first position, having had his fastest lap, a 1:23 stolen by Alex Jarrett, a 1:22 from the Jamaican driver. So we're going to see as that lap time is swapped between them.
Absolutely, and we're getting into a stage of the race where drivers seem to be kind of settling into position. However, Alex Jarrett seems to be pushing on at the moment to be the next driver to contend with Mitch and Wallace, as he has brought that gap under second, and it is about 8.5 tenths at the moment. Mitch and Wallace seems to be the driver that is targeted here this evening. When it's not one driver trying to take the fight to him, it's another. Currently, Alex Jarrett moving to take the fight to Mitch and Wallace, who is on occasion making inroads into Roger Keller, but does not seem to have that level of consistency that you're accustomed to getting out of Mitch and Wallace here this evening. and that may be causing him to come into contention with other drivers, because Alex Jarrett looks to be a man on a mission behind him at the moment, trying to make something happen here in this stage of the race. We have about 6 minutes before we get to the pit window, and Alex Jarrett might be looking to try and get that move done before.
Let's not forget that Alex Jarrett was the man on pole position, so he definitely is not lacking pace at all here tonight. But we're going to be seeing how Michelin is going to be able to take the attacking that he was doing on the likes of Roger Killer and turn that into defense now from a man scoring. You know, he definitely has revenge on his mind. He got that pole position snatched away from him in the first corner melee, and he's definitely looking to get it back.
I apologize, Cale, but was it not Jaden on pole? Did Alex not start in P2 alongside Jaden Harrison? Or was I mistaken as to what happened in qualifying?
I believe I'm mistaken. Alex was on the first row, yes, but he started in second. Apologies for that misinformation there. Definitely in practice, Alex Jarrett was on pace, but our man Jaden Harrison, who started on pole, yes, he did start on pole, survived that first corner melee and moved on by himself. How could I forget?
Absolutely, but that does not dispute the fact that Alex Jarrett is a man with pace and certainly will be looking to take that fight, getting very close there to Mitch and Wallace through that section of the track, and he is right there. It's just trying to find that extra few tenths to get the move done in one of the braking zones, and he looks to be going for it there and does get ahead. Can he make it stick through turn one? Seems to have gotten it done, and a brilliant move there from Alex Jarrett. He looked like a slingshot coming out of that final corner.
Absolutely beautiful move. It all started in turn 8, where Michelle Wallace went a bit deep into the heavy braking zone, that left-hander there into the chicane, and Alex tried to make a move, but Michel made the car as wide as possible, but he didn't get a good exit coming out of the final few corners, and Alex, like you said, like a slingshot, went right around him. He moves now up into P4.
Absolutely, and he will have Roger Keller in his sights, because certainly he would have more pace in hand than Roger Keller would ahead of him, and he has already gotten that gap under a second. So Alex Jarrett, a man on the move here this evening, trying to get back into contention with the drivers at the front, and you can see in the picture-in-picture view there that he can basically glimpse Roger Keller up the road, but certainly they are a lot closer than it might appear. The gap under a second, and going down, it seems, as he gained some time there through turn 10. And as we get back to the line, the gap now 7 tenths, and he was almost a second quicker on that lap than Roger Keller ahead. So certainly Alex Jarrett, with more pace, will likely be looking to make the move by the time we get back to that turn 7, the start of the straight at turn 7.
It may happen even sooner than that. Chad, the gap now under half a second, 2 tenths between the two drivers. Roger Keller is definitely going to be looking in his rearview mirrors, wondering whether to go left or right. I think we're going to be seeing some defensive movements here, almost over a second between Alex and Michel. Alex wasting no time at all, getting right up to the gearbox of Roger Keller. They move now onto the straight. He's going to be sitting in that slipstream for the better part of a kilometer. We may see some sparks fly here heading into the heavy braking zone, but it's a waiting game. Let's wait and see.
Not sure he is close enough to make that move into turn 10. However, he may get some traction. That he seems to have an advantage coming through this turn 10 complex. But and there is a mistake from Roger Keller, a little bit of a wiggle there, and that allows Alex Jarrett to take that position without much of a fight, and Alex Jarrett finds himself now in 3rd place and has some work to do in order to get back to the drivers ahead. And Mitch and Wallace is looking to take advantage of that mistake there from Roger Keller, and Roger Keller, for using that inside line to his advantage, holds on through that section. That was Mitch and Wallace's best chance to get by him, as Mitch and Wallace was looking racy with him at one point or the next, but is now a second away once again, and certainly more action to come here from these three drivers. However, Alex already on the move has cleared Roger by a second, so the fight might pick up between Mitchen and Roger as we progress through this race. But Nathan Bryan also behind is finding himself coming back into contention here, as he is now only 2 seconds and change behind. Raven Plummer is really struggling because she has fallen away from this group by 29 seconds, but struggling even more than she is Kimani Ison behind in 8th position. Further 12, 11, and well, something happened there because that gap just dropped drastically between Kimani and Raven. He can now see her up the road ever so slightly, and she's now 35 seconds, 36 seconds behind the front group.
The battle that we're not seeing on the track between Jaden Harrison and Alex Jarrett. Alex Jarrett here with a 122.9, Jaden Harrison with the fastest lap of a 122.3. We're going to see, as predicted, those two fighting for that fastest lap. I don't think they get a point for it, Chad, but bragging rights, and we know that Jaden Harrison is very competitive on all fronts. It's a very unfortunate, I don't think we're going to get to see Alex and Jaden battle it out on track. Hopefully something happens, or a few the pot gets stirred in the second half of this race.
Well,
30 minutes left.
As we are talking about the pot getting stirred, the pit window opens in 15 seconds, so there's your pot stir, sir. Certainly anything can happen when we get to the pit stop window and all of the drivers taking their pit stops at different times. Whatever their strategy is, maybe that is the way for Alex Jarrett to play himself back into contention. He is catching Vince Da Silva at a rate of knots. The gap under 6 seconds already to Vince Da Silva, who is actually falling away from Jaden slightly. So certainly Vince running comfortably in second, but will have to check his rearview mirrors in a few laps time, depending on when the pit stops start to roll around.
Mitchell Wallace was about 8 tenths behind Roger Killer, but falling back a little bit in that third sector. The pit window now open, 90 minutes to go before it closes, and I don't see anyone diving into the pits just yet. Maybe this lower track surface temperature proving to be a little bit more forgiving on the tires. But we are going to be seeing some action fairly soon. Possibly not from Jaden, who I think he would have been absolutely loving it out there at the front, not pushing, not harassing the tires. Vince Da Silva as well, coming under no pressure, but in a very short time that may change as I see the gap now less than 5 seconds between the man in second and the man in third.
Absolutely, but Jaden Harrison might be watching the deltas, wondering who will pull the trigger on their pit stops first and what the difference in time will be, as Raven Plummer, the first driver to dive into the pits, taking her pit stop early on, maybe in the hopes of using that to her advantage later on, whether in the fight with Kimani Eastman, or to even project herself further up the order, depending on what occurs in the field ahead. Certainly you find yourself with an early advantage if you take an early pit stop, but that advantage will come back to the other runners as tire life starts to wear out later on in that stint. So we will keep an eye on what that means for Raven Plummer's race, and if she is now the catalyst that will trigger the other pit stops by the time we get back to racing conditions for her. It will all depend on what she has, what times she's doing, and if there's any drastic improvement in her pace having fresh rubber on her car, and that might influence some of the other drivers further up the order to make their pit stops.
Although not sure if Raven would make a very good benchmark, seeing as though she's having the best weekend, not the best night so far in terms of performance. Nonetheless, coming out of the pits, only 41 seconds adrift off the next closest person, Kimani Eastman, with 17 minutes to go before the pit window closes.
Absolutely.
We are still going to see, it's a mandatory pit stop. Everyone will have to make a pit stop. It's just about who is able to hit their marks. Hopefully no one speeds into the pits. We may see, there's Jaden Harrison back into the pits now.
I think that might have just been a glitch there, as Jaden Harrison is still 4 seconds clear, well, 3.5 seconds clear of Vince Da Silva in second. Not sure what occurred there. in terms of the timing sheets. Jaden Harrison not. Ooh.
Lord have mercy, the commentator there. Jaden has seen a flawless race thus far, and maybe getting a bit too comfortable. That should definitely jerk him wide away, having a nice little 360 there. Just looking behind him, checking where his competition is. That does take a 1.5 seconds out of his lead over Vince Da Silva, but
Jaden Harrison pulling a Max Verstappen Hungary 2022 there, just a little pirouette to kind of assert your dominance over the rest of the field. You know, I have time to do donuts and still stay 7 seconds ahead of the competition, as well as this could be the tire life now coming into play, and Jaden Harrison losing a bit of grip there. So look to see Jaden Harrison dive into the pits at the end of this lap to, you know, get some fresh rubber on for the last half of the race, because we're about at the halfway mark now, 50 seconds away from halfway distance, and certainly if there's ever a time to make a pit stop, it would be now, unless you're looking to gain some serious pace advantage at the end of the race. And Jaden Harrison soldiers on, so maybe just a momentary mistake there for Jaden Harrison, costing him a couple of seconds. He was 128 on that lap, which is about 6 seconds off the pace, so he lost about 6 seconds there over the duration of that lap. But we will be tuning into Alex Jarrett in a moment's time, as he's 2.5 seconds behind Vince Da Silva. That gap has been coming down very steadily, and you can almost see Vince up the road there now. Alex Jarrett trying to get back into contention here. Roger Keller has pulled the trigger on his pit stop and has dived into the pits, and based on Raven's pit stop, the pit stop delta is about 50 seconds, depending on whether or not, well, that may have been because she had damage to take care of as well. So not sure what the actual pit stop delta will be. Roger Keller may give us an indication of what that is, but Nathan Bryan seems to be having an incident there, and there was some heavy contact in that incident, and he might now be having to take his pit stop with some damage there to his car. So that once again just costing Nathan Bryan some time there, and Roger Keller emerging from the pits will be looking to dispatch of Nathan very quickly, as Nathan might have some damage to assess on his car.
And this also brings Kimani Eastman into the fray. He'll be gaining a position on Nathan Bryan when he does take his pit stop. We're expecting that soon. But Chad, can you imagine being Vince Da Silva, seeing headlights shining the wrong way at you over the crest of that hill there? Jaden made that spin. It was quite a controlled spin, if I must say so.
Yeah, it did look quite graceful, not gonna lie. Vince Da Silva and Mitch and Wallace, the next two drivers to take their pit stop, so we will see where they re-emerge. They're about, what's that, 38 seconds clear of Nathan Bryan, so they should emerge ahead of Nathan. However, we will see where that does occur when we get back.
Mitch does make a position up on Vince Da Silva in the pits. Mitchell may have, is he in the pit exit? Or no,
no, they're still stationary. There goes Vince Da Silva now, to maintain that position. Sometimes the timing sheets can be a little deceiving, ladies and gentlemen. It did show that Mitchell momentarily got ahead.
Roger Clark here. Sorry, right? Roger Keller here. Roger seems to have made up a position heading into the pit lane.
Roger Keller now taking a pit stop along with Nathan Bryan. It's a drive-through penalty for Roger Keller. I believe he may have gotten a penalty for speeding in the pit lane previously. So Roger Keller takes his drive-through and re-emerges in 6th position with some work to do, and that promotes Kimani Eastman up to 5th. Alex Jarrett finds himself now in P2, and maybe this is the time to get the hammer down, or he needs to take that pit stop very urgently, depending on the pace of Vince Da Silva. Currently, Vince Da Silva's best lap a 1:22.9, the fastest lap overall a 1:22.2. So certainly we will be watching what Vince Da Silva's pace is, having taken his pit stop, and whether or not Alex Jarrett needs to pull the trigger on his will be determined by what Vince's pace is looking like, because the longer Alex stays out, the more this is on Vince Da Silva to make that pit stop worthwhile. So we will be watching as Vince Da Silva coming in again. And I'm not sure if he also got a drive through there for speeding in the pit lane. Maybe the driver was having a bit of issue seeing their pit marks. Yeah, it looks like Vince Da Silva taking a drive through penalty will re-emerge down in 4th position. And does that give Mitch and Wallace P3? Yes, it does. Mitch and Wallace P3 with 12 seconds on Vince Da Silva. A drive-through penalty there for Vince, maybe speeding in the pit lane, and certainly some of these drivers seem to be struggling with that pit line. And that should actually comfortably hand Alex Jarrett P2. So the only driver he has to contend with at the moment is Jaden Harrison, with a 9-second gap between the pair of them, and neither driver yet to pit. So the pit stops become that much more important for Jaden Harrison and Alex Jarrett, with Vince Da Silva taking himself out of the equation with that drive-through penalty. And we will watch to see what inroads he can make into Mitchen Wallace, who has pitted. So Mitchen sits currently net P3 overall, and the only driver that can, well, Vince Da Silva has some work to do if he wants to get that podium position back, having taken that drive-through penalty.
So, Chad, I stepped away for about 60 seconds, and in the space of that time, Alex Jarrett now sits in P2, 9 seconds adrift of our leader, Jaden Harrison, hearing that Vince has a drive-through penalty.
Indeed. So it seems that Vince may have sped in the pit lane on the entry for his pit stop and had to take a drive-through penalty because of it. And that has promoted Mitch and Wallace to P3, and Vince Da Silva is down to a net P4, given the time gap between the leaders. And Alex Jarrett, trying for the undercut, has pulled the trigger on his pit stop and has come in. And certainly Jaden Harrison will now be looking at the timing sheets and wondering if he needs to react to that pit stop, because he will be the only driver left out on track. But Jaden Harrison responding on the track with the fastest first sector of anybody so far. So Jaden Harrison getting a move on, knowing that the pit stops are occurring, and we will see if he can keep up that pace over the duration of this lap. Maybe Jaden Harrison getting the memo that it is indeed hammer time.
It's been a dominant first 20 laps for Jaden Harrison, but as you said, these tires, I'm not sure how much more they can take, so we're probably going to be seeing him coming in towards the end of the pit window here. 9 minutes left to go, still a lot of time for Jaden to play around with, but he may have to start doing the calculations in his head. Is he managing to can he keep pumping out those times, those competitive times, to safeguard against the likes of Alex Jarrett? And he seems to have thought better of it. Jaden now into the pit lane, not getting any drive-through warning there, not speeding into the pits, I don't think. But now we'll be watching where Jaden and Alex will come together, if they will at all, towards the pit exit.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jaden Harrison is putting on a display for the ages, because that in-lap was purple sector 1, purple sector 2, and then into the pits he went. So Jaden Harrison, a man on a mission here this evening to just dominate this race any way he can. With 18 minutes to go, he should comfortably re-emerge in the lead of this race, and it seems that he has already completed his pit stop, dare I say.
I think that answers my question on whether or not he's able to pump out those lap times as he sets one of his fastest laps, or almost sets one of the fastest lap of the race another time. But Jaden there, as you said, absolutely dominating the third round of the Chase of Pace Porsche series. But who we're watching now is Alex Jarrett fending off Mitchen Wallace. Mitchen there seems to have had a bit of an incident with the wall, I think, going a bit wider in the final corner. But also Nathan Bryan, less than half a second behind Kimani Eastman, absolutely pushing him around those corners. Nathan Bryan not itching at all and trying to get past his fellow Jamaican driver coming through the final sectors here. Very close, trying to make a move going down the inside around the final corner. Kimani leaves the space and Nathan Bryan moves himself up into P6. A lovely move there.
and that move takes him out of position. Though will Kimani Eastman try to fight back, thinks better of it by the time they get to the braking zone, but Nathan Bryan running wide there, and that gifts the position back to Kimani, so he will have to get ready and go again. The gap still manageable to Kimani Eastman ahead, so Nathan Bryan will need to recompose and get back on the offensive. But it seems Alex Jarrett had an issue there with his pit stop or with the lap that followed, because he is now 41 seconds adrift of the race lead, with Mitch and Wallace 2 seconds behind, and Jaden Harrison sits even more comfortably out in front at this stage of the race.
Perhaps that leaves some more time for a few more donuts, maybe another pit stop or two from Jaden. But Chad, let's not forget that Nathan Bryan was fighting Michelle Wallace, literally trying to take that position away from him in the earlier stages of this race. So I'm really expecting to see that gap drop between himself and Eastman, and we're seeing it here. The gap no less than a second coming to the final sequence of corners. Once again, Nathan's playground as he's making up loads of time. Now almost half a second between the two Jamaican drivers coming around the final corner. Nathan Bryan not quite close enough, but we'll see how his race progresses from here on out. 15 minutes left to go in this race.
Absolutely, and I think by the time we get back to the end of the next lap, he may be looking to make that move, and maybe even before that, as they're now going through the S's. And certainly Nathan Bryan does have the pace advantage here on Kimani Eastman, but we know Kimani Eastman is feisty in his defense when he wants to be, so he will not make it easy for Nathan. But Nathan, with the overwhelming pace and a little shimmy there from Kimani Eastman, gifts that position to Nathan Bryan. Kimani Eastman making a small error there that resulted in Nathan Bryan not even having to fight for that position. Is that the commentator's curse once again? Did I just jinx Kimani's defense?
Not sure about it this time around. Kimani maybe coming under a bit of pressure. We know Nathan is not afraid to get right up behind you and have you focusing more on what's going on behind you rather than what's going on in front of you. And I think that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Just a bit of an oversteer moment there for Kimani Eastman, and that's all it took for Nathan to move up into sixth position. Once again, we may see them have another coming together, but I'm not sure about that. Chad, a little further up ahead with Jen Wallace, 2.5 seconds behind Alex Jarrett, but here's Roger Kello. Was really close there to the back of Vince Da Silva,
but seems to have made a mistake in that fight. So Roger Kello might have the pace here to catch Vince Da Silva a little bit later on, but certainly having a moment there that resulted in him falling away a little bit. But behind the rest of the field, Miss Raven Plummer is having herself a third evening, finds herself now a minute and change behind the rest of the field, and she's actually a lap down on the leader, Jaden Harrison, and this is not at all the usual performance you are expecting from Miss Raven Plummer, but she is holding on, and that singular point does help in the championship fight that is ensuing, because this will put her 1 point ahead of Kurt Moss, and certainly all to play for in the final round. Jaden Harrison will become a contender in the final round. He should be about 18 points if all continues as it is now, and those 18 points will put him in P3, it seems, and certainly that would make for an interesting fight, because the top three would be separated by about 5 points going into the final round. So all to play for when we get to Kota next week, if things finish as they are now. However, we are still on board with Roger Kello, who is making inroads into Vince Da Silva ahead. The gap was 2.2, it's now 1.7, and certainly Roger Kello will want to gain back that fourth position, where I believe he was prior to the pit stops. But the drive-through penalty played a factor there for Roger Kello, as it did for Vince Da Silva as well, who finds himself out of the podium spots, handing it to Mitch and Wallace, who is comfortably holding on at the moment, and he is staying at a solid 2 seconds behind Alex Jarrett, keeping Alex Jarrett on it, because they are matching lap times at the moment, and that
actually fast that lap.
Yeah, and that will certainly help to keep Alex Jarrett on his toes because he cannot afford a mistake that might gift Mitch and Wallace that position at the moment. So Mitch and Wallace doing exactly what Mitch and Wallace does, staying right in contention just for the off chance that something goes wrong in the race ahead, and that will put him into contention where necessary.
And I see there in the chat my mistake earlier, referring to Roger Kelly as Roger Clark. They're ensuring that I know that is our former Minister of Agriculture, but Roger here earlier was the Minister of Defense. I think we could quote him as that for this race, fending off Mitch and Wallace, fending off Nathan Bryant before and now. Although Nathan is 24 seconds behind, I suppose that defense is now turning into attack as Roger is not quite struggling, but trying to keep up with Vince Da Silva ahead of him.
He was closing the gap to Vince Da Silva, but has fallen away a little bit there. The gap now 3 seconds, basically, between the two of them. It did look a little closer before, but Roger Kelly may be making a few errors too many there, giving Vince a little bit of breathing room, but certainly still keeping him honest. So Vince Da Silva will be checking his rearview mirrors and watching his pace to kind of make sure that he can maintain that gap to Roger Kelly whilst keeping his tires alive. The pit window will be closing in 27 seconds, but it won't matter. All drivers have already taken their pit stops. So it's a dash to the finish, the last 10 minutes of this race. And there are a few drivers in position to make a move if they are able to keep the drivers ahead honest. Kimani Eastman is closing back in on Nathan Bryan, who may have made another mistake there, because Nathan Bryan now 34 seconds adrift of Roger Kelly, which was not the case previously. So
Nathan seems to be dropping like a stone. I was watching that delta drop from 2.5 seconds. It seemed as though every corner he went around, he was losing 2/10. The gap now settling around 2 seconds. Nathan, we know he loves that final sector. We can see here in the timing chart there, his last lap time was at 1:34, 10 seconds off the average lap time around Road Atlanta. So he definitely had a few mistakes, a few mishaps around a couple of these corners, allowing Kimani Eastman to, get a glimpse of hope to get back at him, but he has firmly replanted himself in that 3-second window. Kimani Eastman can do nothing but watch him drive off into the sunset. Nathan Bryant, it may be a little bit too late for him with less than 2 minutes of this race left. It's looking as though things may finish how they are currently. Roger Kelly still about, 3 seconds? I think it was 2 seconds adrift of Vince Da Silva, but matching him for a lap time there. So we're gonna see how Roger Kelly's race develops in the dying embers of this race, as Mitchell Wallace in third position has a bit of an incident. I believe that's coming off turn 7.
Yeah.
Or rather coming out of turn 5, heading into turn 6, then into turn 7, which leads you out onto the back straight. Mitchell Wallace there having a moment.
I was just about to say he was doing a very good job of keeping Alex Jarrett honest, and as I had the thought, I looked up and he was having a moment. He was right there with Alex Jarrett. The gap was teetering on the 2 seconds, and I was looking to see if he would be able to make inroads into Alex Jarrett in the latter stages here of this race, but those hopes seem to have been dashed with that small error there from Mitchell Wallace, costing him about 10 seconds overall. And the drivers seem to be struggling here in the last part of this race. A few drivers making some errors as we are getting into the dying stages of this race. 7.5 minutes to go. And it seems that you were correct, Cale. We will end exactly as we are now, or barring catastrophe, we will end as we are now.
The famous statement, barring any unfortunate mishaps, we probably will be ending this way. But Chad, I was going to say, perhaps the driver is having a bit of a challenge getting the fresh tires up to temperature. Starting on the tires they did so close together, battling for position, they would have definitely put a bit more load through the tires and so thus more temperature through them. But maybe things have settled now and the driver is just unable to get the temperature into the tires that they need. That's how we're seeing mistakes from, from Jaden Harrison. We're seeing mistakes from Chen Wallace. We're seeing mistakes from Roger Kellogg.
Yeah, absolutely. And track temperatures have dropped slightly. It's not a massive drop. It's down about 2 degrees. We're now at 35 degrees Celsius. I believe we were at 37 earlier. And it sounds minuscule when you say it that way. However, these are fine margins that we're dealing with when you're talking about race car driving. So that 2 degrees does play a massive difference in how the tires react in any condition. And it certainly will affect how you get the grip that you have through these corners. If you're used to doing it one way and suddenly you have to make that adjustment, or you are not aware of the adjustments that needed to be made, it can cause you to come upon these errors that we see some of these drivers making. And this is where we talk about sometimes it is good to have a crew chief with you that can tell you that, hey, these things have happened, so be careful of the grip in this section of track, and so on and so forth, because it may not have been noticeable to the drivers that, hey, the track temperatures have fallen slightly, and so things will change in terms of grip in certain sections of the track. Certainly in the section with the S's, which is I think where Mitch and Wallace made that mistake coming out of, and Jaden Harrison as well. That section of track is one that requires significant grip and lots of downforce. So when you have small variations in track temperature like you have in this segment, it does make quite a bit of difference. And we are at the 5-minute mark, ladies and gentlemen, with 5 minutes to go. And the field is quite separated, but Nathan Bryan making a mistake and giving Kimani Eastman back that 6th position. And as we were discussing, the drop in track temp maybe still playing a role here, and Roger Keller moves up ahead.
Making a mistake as well, dropping now down into 5th position. Roger Keller snatches that position up easy as he goes up into 4th position. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time to see a battle ensue between Nathan to take that 6th place back and Roger Keller to take back that Vince Da Silva to take back that 4th position, but it's still all to play for here. Not quite the catastrophic moment that we thought might happen, but it's definitely something. 4 minutes left in this race and we're still having action on the track.
Yeah, no, and Nathan Bryan is struggling on this lap because he has made quite a few errors. He is now 28 seconds behind Kimani Eastman, having made a couple of errors there on the same lap. By the time he gets back to the line, we will see how bad those errors were. But he is now, actually, Kimani just crossed the line and he is going through sector 3. So certainly that was a costly mistake from Nathan Bryan. And he was battling with Mitch and Wallace earlier, and Mitch and Wallace is now coming up to lap Nathan Bryan. So that is a drastic change from what would have occurred. I don't think Mitchen will be close enough to lap him by the time we get to the end of this race, but as he seems to have had another error there, Nathan Bryan struggling here in the last part of this race, and that is not what you want to see for a driver that was looking so good at the start, to be in contention for around 3rd, 4th place, but currently sits down in 7th, having made a few errors consecutively. Vince Da Silva is only 2.3 seconds behind Roger Keller, and you can see Roger just up the road there, but I don't think there is enough time for Vince to get back into contention for that spot.
Good news for some drivers, the events of the past 2 minutes. Bad news for others. And on the case of Nathan Bryan, unfortunately, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And immaculate start for Jaden Harrison, and he seems to be looking to finish that very same way. Alex Jarrett as well, who started in 2nd position, fell down the order to last place and now finds himself back up into 2nd. It has been a roller coaster of a drive for some drivers. Just another Sunday afternoon drive for Jaden Harrison, as well as Raven Plummer, unfortunately looking like she's going to finish where she started. We've had one DNF so far, Kurt Moss showing his face.
Sorry, Kale, we may have a dash to the finish here between Vince Da Silva and Roger Keller, who is now 8 tenths behind and chasing Roger down. So I'm not sure if Roger made an error there that played Vince back into contention. So this could be the fight for fourth position. 2 seconds, well, a second and a half there for Vince on that lap. And certainly he will be looking to try and get that move done with about 2-ish laps to go here in this race. And we are heading into the final moments of this race with a battle on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. So we will be staying tuned with these two until we get to the end of this race. Roger Keller losing a little bit of time to Vince Silva there. The gap now half a second, and Roger, sensing the pressure, is trying to get a move on, but maybe overdriving a little bit, trying to keep Vince at bay. And Vince, certainly smelling blood in the water, will be trying anything he can to get that move done. Roger there looked slow coming through turn 6-7, and that will certainly be giving Vince the advantage here. Vince is almost right there with him, the two neck and neck going down the back straight, and by the time we get to turn 10 there will be a change in position, and Vince Da Silva gets ahead before we even get into the braking zone. Roger Keller there maybe having a little bit of an issue coming out of the turn 7 onto the straight, and Vince Da Silva gets that move done, and there's yet more changes before we get to the checkered flag, Kale.
There's still another lap to go, however, and I'm not calling it down, Chad, but we may hopefully don't see any incidents to determine how this race finishes. Jaden Harrison now on the final lap, but it's still all to play for. Coming through the first corner, the first sector, cresting that hill is Vince Da Silva, followed very closely, only 8 tenths behind. Was only 8 tenths behind was Roger Keller. It looks like Vince Da Silva definitely getting it right through the first couple of corners, and it's now 2 seconds ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, that is Jaden Harrison, the race leader, behind fourth position. And Jaden Harrison has lapped everyone up to fourth place, and maybe that's why Roger Keller was found disappearing from behind Vince Da Silva, slowing down to let Jaden Harrison through. And Jaden Harrison right there with Vince Da Silva as we get back onto the straight, and Vince Da Silva should be getting blue flags to get out of the way of Jaden Harrison there. And that's not something you see in these races very often, up to fourth place being lapped over 50 minutes, and that is rather new. Jaden Harrison there, that just shows you the level of perfection that he has been today, getting ahead of Vince Da Silva there to take the checkered flag. And Vince is now actually a lap down on the leader as Jaden Harrison crosses the line to take the win. And Vince Da Silva will cross to finish P4, a lap down from Jaden Harrison. And what a race it has been for Jaden here this evening. Just picture perfect down to his pirouette earlier. You know,
from start to finish, Jaden Harrison has shown us all how it's done. 50 minutes, 34 laps, 33 laps of absolute perfection from Jaden Harrison. Alex Jarrett with the comeback of a lifetime, starting in second and looking to be finishing in second. You wouldn't know that he went through such a roller coaster of events for this racing.
Absolutely, Alex Jarrett having gone from second to almost last and then back to second will come across the line to take P2 now, and Mitch and Wallace holds on to that third place. He cannot be challenged at this moment as all of the drivers around him has finished, so Mitch and Wallace will take the final podium paying position. But a good recovery drive from Alex Jarrett, doing his best damage limitation there, getting back to P2. Jaden Harrison, however, driving an immaculate race here this evening, with the exception of his ballet routine. However, that you look at the timing sheets and it's not going to show Jaden Harrison had a spin. It's going to show Jaden Harrison 53.8 seconds ahead of second place and has lapped everybody up to P4.
Unfortunately, we have our second DNF tonight, Raven Plummer. Difficulties from the start of from start of practice right into the race, unfortunately DNFing this time around. But as Roger Robinson in the chat so astutely points out, 4 persons will be in contention for the championship coming into the 4th and final round. Jaden Harrison, Alex Jarrett, Raven Plummer, and Kurt Moss. So if you didn't see the first or second round, I'm gonna tell you right now, you don't want to miss the final one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if Alex will be that close because Alex Jarrett was is came into this race on 0 points, so he will take 10 points away from this race, and I think that will put him a little out of reach for the front trio. But certainly, it is a three-way fight between Raven Plummer, Jaden Harrison, and Kurt Moss when we go into the final round at Kota. We will be talking to our top three here this evening, starting with Mitch and Wallace, who came home to take third place. And I will just attempt to get Mitchen in and check that sound is good. Mitchen, are you hearing me? Sorry, Mitchen, are you with me? Let me just ensure that we have audio coming through for you. Just do a mic check for me, Mitchen. One more time.
Mic check.
Okay, good. So, Mitchen Wallace, a very eventful race for you here this evening, but managing to come home here in P3. Talk us through the events of the race.
I don't like this car. I started late and I haven't been able to actually get, as in understand the car fully. It actually started to come in the race. We saw what happened at the start. Had a few moments, started to get into the rhythm. Tried to go for the undercut, almost worked, and then I guess I started pushing a little bit too hard. When I got close to Alex, spun out. We saw how that went. I had to actually finish the race with a severely overheating back left tire, so I couldn't take a lot of the corners as aggressive as I wanted. And then I was almost out, I guess. So yeah, eventful as I said.
And
Barely finished.
you mentioned the overheating of the tires. I took the cars for a test drive yesterday around this track, and I do notice that I generate a lot of heat through certain corners. Is that the case across the board, or is that unique to me and my driving style?
No, that's not unique to you and your driving style. For the entirety of sector 1, if you're not careful, the tires are hot, and if you push a little bit too hard, you're gonna spin out. That's what happened to me. I touched the curb, and this was while the tires were at their peak or whatever you call it, amount of heat, and I lost it on lap 27. But once it got out of the window, it was impossible to get it back in, so I had to drive sparingly.
Noted. Well, a good recovery drive to some extent overall, and good to see you on the podium there, and good luck in the final round.
All right, thanks. Have a good one.
Yeah, man. And that was Mitch and Wallace, or P3 finisher. We will now be taking our second place finisher, Mr. Alex Jarrett. Alex, are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Your race was that much more eventful than Mitchen's. Talk us through the events of your race.
Firstly, big congratulations to Mitchen and Jaden for the podium and the win that they got. But for my race, at the start, the game was a little bit too bright, so I had this accident in turn 1. I'm not sure what happened there. And after the safety car restart, I just pushed all the way until the first pit stop.
Okay. And had some moves to get done throughout the course of getting back into contention. Any moves that stand out to you in terms of the overtakes that you had to make?
I would say all of them were pretty good. I would say the one for fourth place. I don't remember who I overtook there, but the I brake later, and I basically put my nose in there at the up the hill at the last sector.
Yeah, you seem to have quite a bit of pace in sector 3 there, because you I believe it was Mitchen that you slingshotted around in turn 1. That was in turn 12 rather, not turn 1. That was a pretty move. Is it that you found that you had more confidence in the braking zone of turn 10 to give you a better drive through that last sector?
I wouldn't say in braking, more like I braked pretty early to get on throttle much quicker.
Sorry, Alex, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, I was saying that I braked pretty early for better exits.
Okay. And overall, the latter part of that race, you seem to have had a couple of errors. Is it the same struggle with keeping the tires in the window that may have caused that?
At the end, it pretty much was like frustration because I missed the pit box completely. So I just stopped like driving the way I was in the first stint because I completely like ruined my second stint at the pit stop.
Oh, right. You were one of the drivers that got a drive through there for the speeding in the pit lane, was it?
No, not a drive-through. No, I missed the pit box.
Oh, you missed the pit box.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, given all that you had to contend with, still a brilliant drive to come home P2. Congratulations again, and we look forward to what you have to do in the final round.
Thank you very much, and have a great night as well.
You as well, thank you. That was Alex Jarrett, our P2 finisher. We are cutting it rather close, so we will keep our interview with Jaden Harrison very brief. Not that he has much to talk about. Jaden?
It was a very tough race. The night combined with the Porsche Cup made it very challenging. I had to find the balance. Spun out like 2 times, but in the first thing I had too much fuel. Alex was catching me, and hoping he would get up with Vince, have a nice battle, but it looks like he missed his pit stop, and from there I kind of just drove away with it, and it was pretty uneventful from there.
Yeah, we did catch one of your spins. It looked like you were trying to imitate Max Verstappen from Hungary last year. You know, just do a spin, still win the race, and win in dominant fashion, dare I say.
Yes, the tires were overheating through the corners. You had to be on balance with the temps right through the whole race, keeping them in the window. So it was very difficult for everybody, and we got through that one.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations, Jaden, and I think you're now 5 points behind the championship leader, so all to play for in the final round. We wish you luck, and yeah, good race.
Yes.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that about wraps us up here this evening. Thank you, as always, to our streaming partner, SportsMax, and stay tuned to our social medias for all upcoming events. CTCC on a Friday, as well as the final round of the Porsche Cup next Saturday. I've been Chad Dillon. Alongside me is Cale Vaden Ropo, and thank you for joining us here this evening. Good night.